but it is very difficult to record and analyze the answer. To avoid this problem, you must ask short questions like this one.
How many open universities are there in India? Choices are A. 8, B. 9, C. 10.
It really helps to devise questions that are short, simple and clear. The questions are very difficult to write, but answers very easy to mark. If a question is long and complicated, learners will have difficulty with it, even though they might have understood the material perfectly. Avoid using negatives in questions as far as possible. They might cause needless confusion. For example, instead of asking why counseling is not a compulsory component in distance education, it would be better to ask, should counseling have been a compulsory component in distance education? Of course, a negative has to be used when there is a special reason for it. With written material, you should allow the respondent to keep it and refer to it if he wants to, while answering the question. You're testing his comprehension, not his memory. In an interview, you can use two-choice type questions, where the question allows only two possible answers, such as yes, no, or true, false. These are not as good as the short answer kind, because the respondent has 50% chance of getting the right answer, just by guessing. However, there are times when it is difficult to frame a question in short answer form, so you have to fall back on the two-choice type.
Multiple choice question is better than two-type choice questions because there is less chances to get right answer just by guessing. Only 20 to 25%. In fact, it depends upon a number of alternatives. While writing the multiple choice questions, keep alternative as short as possible. You should not use none of these, all of these among the choices. Don't give unintentional clues to the right answers. In fact, the question should be sufficiently clear. Someone who had acquired knowledge can give answers right. Whatever source of questions you use in the pretest, give clear instruction to the learners how to record their answers. Of course, it seems obvious to you, but it will not equally obvious to the learners.
Analyzing pre-test results.
After finalizing the questionnaire and collection of information, the next step is data information and analysis. If you asked an open question in the pretest like, whose picture is this? You must see through the answers given by various learners, and if the same answer crops up many times, you can tabulate the results. For 10 learners, you can tabulate the results like this.
2 people took it for Alfred Marshall's picture, while 3 thought it was Keynes. Only 5 people could identify him as Adam Smith.
This is more useful to the artist than simply saying half of the learners got it wrong. This would suggest to him as to what misled the learners and how he could improve the drawing. If the pretest contains a number of questions, it is useful to see the answers separately for each question. This is called item analysis. For example, you have given 5 questions to 10 learners.
Answers can be coded like this. For right, put 1. For wrong, 2. For don't know, 3. And for no reply, 0. Now you can analyze the results like this.
By looking at the columns, you can see, for example, as to what questions provided the most difficulty. In this case, questions 5 and 6 were poorly answered, followed by questions 3 and 9. A course writer should specify the minimum acceptable level of performance that he accepts from his learner. In this case, for example, a course writer has specified that he expects 3/4 of the questions to be correctly answered.
If every learner scores more than 75% marks in the pretest, then the unit is satisfactory, although there is a possibility of minor improvement. On the other hand, if learners scored less than 75% marks, then course writers have to change the whole unit.
Close testing.
If you ask the learner to assess the readability of a passage, one learner may say that it is clear and simple. Another may say that it isn't. If you're fluent in the language yourself, you may be inclined to trust your own judgment. But that doesn't really solve the problem. What you require is to measure objectively how readable a passage is.
How readable was the passage? Could you understand it?
Yes, sir. It was very simple and clear, and I could understand it very easily.
सर मेरे को तो बिल्कुल भी समझ में नहीं आया.
There is a way to do this. It's called close testing. This testing was invented for English, but it has since been shown that you can apply to other languages, even to ones that are linguistically unrelated to English. To do a close testing on passage, you type out the passage leaving out every fifth word, putting in a line 2 centimeters long for every word you leave out. So it looks like this. Be sure to leave out every fifth word, whatever be the word, even if the word is the, is, or and. Then you make 10 to 15 copies according to your sample and distribute them amongst your learners.
You can ask them to think what the missing words are. If they have no idea what the missing words are, they will leave it blank. But you should encourage them to think if they can guess. Give a score of every word guessed correctly. But ignore minor spelling mistake. Don't use synonymous. Count all the correct guesses divided by total number of blanks multiplied by 100. This is close score of your passage.
For example, the passage contained 20 blanks and you gave it to 25 learners. Altogether, therefore, they had 20 into 25 blanks is equal to 500. Let us say that they made 135 correct guesses altogether. The close score for passage is 27. The higher the score, the more readable the passage. A high close score means that a learner would find the passage easy to read. A low score means that they would find it difficult. If you have only one close score, say 27, it does not tell us whether it is a high score or a low score. We have to do close tests on several different passages in the same language on the same learners before you can judge whether a particular score is high or low.
For example, we had obtained a score of 5 different passages 13, 19, 21, 25 and 26. If we tested a new passage on it, we got score 27. We can conclude here that the new passage is quite readable compared with 5 previous passages.
Getting reactions to the material.
We have talked about the ways of testing as to whether the learner can learn and understand from the material. That's the most important thing. But one also needs to know whether the learners find the material interesting or boring or in some way offensive. You can use Likert scale to evaluate this. Likert scale is a form of attitude measurement. You present a series of statements like the lesson was too long, the lesson was easy to understand, the lesson covered the topic thoroughly, and so on. With each statement, you provide a scale such as strongly agree, can't say, disagree, strongly disagree. The questionnaire looks somewhat like this. Respondent puts a tick to indicate his chosen response.
One of the big problems in getting learners' reaction to draft material is that people are polite. If you give a draft unit or lesson to some learners and then ask,
Was the lesson interesting?
Yes, sir.
Even if the learner finds the lesson boring, they will not say it. We cannot take the results of state attitude questions at their face values.
If 90% of the learners found a lesson interesting, that doesn't necessarily mean that the lesson was interesting. However, the result would be useful if one were to be testing two different versions of a lesson. Suppose we divide a class of learners into group A and group B and give them two versions of a lesson. 90% of those with version A said they found the unit interesting, as against 60% of those with version B. Perhaps the figures are overstating the amount of enjoyment of the learner. However, one can safely conclude that version B was less interesting than version A.
One way to overcome this obstacle of politeness is to simply instruct them to be critical. You may ask them to list the 5 things which they liked most and the 5 things which they didn't like. You may also ask them which part of the material was difficult.
A final word of caution about relying on learners' reactions to the draft materials. If the learners react badly to it, then there is something wrong with it and it needs to be changed. But if they approve the material, that doesn't necessarily mean that the material is satisfactory. The reason partly may be because of the politeness problem that I mentioned just now, or partly the reaction could be that they have got nothing to compare it with. We have seen in this program how researchers have pre-tested or development tested the learning material by observing the learners, seeing the utilization of the material, types of questions asked, analysis of the results, close testing, and the reactions to the material. That's how we end the program today. Thank you very much.